So I want to thank you for joining me for this New Year's meditation and Dhamma talk. And I hope that I can help to start the new year right for you with some insights and making a nice energetic connection for you between not just me and you, but between the whole group of meditators, any beautiful energy that we can access and invite to join us for the meditation, as well as hoping to connect your heart with some higher truth, some higher understanding, so that you can start the new year as a new year where there will be spiritual development, which, from my perspective, is by far the most important type of development, vital, in fact, when looking at the big picture, when looking at not just what am I going to get in this lifetime, but not just looking at what we usually look at, which is what's going to make me feel more comfortable or more at ease or allow me to have more fun in my immediate experience or soon. That's generally what we're taught to follow, not necessarily taught to follow that because it is the right way to be. It certainly isn't the most helpful for us, but unfortunately it is the most helpful for big industry to continue consumerism, etc. But it isn't the way of thinking to think what soon can make me feel better, happier, or more fun. Looking at the world through a perspective of basically how I'm feeling now, and then guessing at what I could get or what I need to change in my immediate surroundings so that I can feel more comfortable or better. Having that type of mentality isn't the type of mentality that is going to get us very far spiritually. And from that other perspective, this is just a small stop in a long path, this lifetime of ours. And it's not just about killing the time until we die, or just trying to make it as fun or as comfortable as we can. But this is just a small stop. And when we have an opportunity with this small stop where we have hopefully and very fortunately a healthy mind that is able to take in information and understand it, a relatively healthy body that is able to sit and walk and have extremities, that can hear and see, and smell and taste and touch, that we use this body and this healthy mind to cultivate good and higher and more important things for ourselves, and start to see the world in such a way that it isn't about what can I get from it, only thinking, what can I get from it to make me feel better than I'm feeling at the moment, or feel more at ease. But see the world in a way where it is an opportunity to become a higher quality heart making its way through this very long journey, this very long process. And for some of you, the interest might even become about how do I transcend this long process of moving from body to body and mind to mind and plane to plane, moving along. And so the teachings of Dhamma are actually not just aimed at making you happier or a better person or a more powerful, stronger mind, beautiful heart in this lifetime. All that stuff is great and are good side effects of the long game. The long game is to be able to transcend mundane reality. Another way to say that is to get us out of the fiction or the delusion that we are this little temporary body, this little temporary mind, and be able to move into reality outside of delusion and the fiction that our thoughts and minds have us caught in outside of that, and firstly to wake up out of it and then to study the way that things really are and transcend them. And so we get really nice side effects along the way of that process. And some of them is that life is much smoother, happier, more manageable as we do. But it does require work, and it does require some shifts in perspective. So I can offer some suggestions as far as shifts in perspective that can help you to see things in a way where it is not just immediately beneficial, but it also helps the long game as far as helping us have a transcendent and more powerful mind. So generally speaking, getting specific now, when someone says something mean or nasty to us, or condescending, something that makes us generally feel bad or feel angry, generally speaking, the way that we act internally with regards to a situation like that. Now, externally, we all act in different ways. Some of us kind of cower or stay quiet, and some of us react back and lash back out and fight. But internally, how we act is usually similar, which is we at least criticize that person to ourselves, or defend ourselves. We get our back up and either fight them in our mind or defend. No, I wasn't doing that. I was just this. Or how come you always do that or this? And we have at least an internal discussion, if not a one that we start to create more conflict. And we can tell from the content of what we're talking to ourselves about that the immediate feeling is to not have a look to see if we were right or wrong. Sometimes we can do that later after we blow off some steam inside our mind. It's like, yeah, I guess I wasn't fair there, or wait a minute, no, I did nothing, or, at least have a look inside and see if it was at least half our fault, or perhaps we had done other things wrong to make them feel this way, or whatever it might be. But we can see that the immediate reaction, at least internally, is one where we're not looking at ourselves. And certainly the immediate reaction has a sense of me and other. It has a sense that someone is attacking me. And so we can learn a lot from just that, just seeing our reaction to things, in this case, somebody being not nice to us. We can see from what we're talking to ourselves about when we feel attacked that the words that we're telling ourselves are coming from some fundamental misunderstandings on our part. One is that I'll feel better. This is the right thing to do. That telling myself these things, defending myself, or lashing back out at them in my mind is going to somehow make me feel better. Our mind is always looking to feel better or be at more ease. It often does that in very wrong ways. In fact, most of the time, it moves in the wrong directions for actual happiness. But the mind can only act in ways that it understands or that it has previously acted. And so it thinks that defending ourselves in our mind or lashing back out at them in our mind or really lashing out at them is going to somehow ease the pain of the attack or free ourselves from the suffering that is going on. Even internally here, when we're talking to ourselves about it, there's a sense, we don't consciously know this when it's happening, but there's a sense of this is the habit of the mind, this is what it's learned, and the tendency of the mind is to try to move to more ease, or to more happiness at least, do what's going to be more entertaining. In some case, it's what's more juicy. It thinks is going to be happier or more satisfying. So the mind will proceed to, well, you said that, and that's not fair because of this or that, and what about when this or that? And when it does that, it's actually thinking that that is the best thing to do in that moment. And we might have learned teachings from other people about positive thought, about meditation, about mindfulness, and then think that, oh, why is my mind doing that? And I would imagine that a lot of you listening here, because you're involved in this type of stuff, you'll think, okay, that might not be the optimum action. You might notice that you're reacting and thinking all these things. However, deeper down in your mind or in your heart, it doesn't know yet or understand yet that this isn't the best action or the most productive action, and it might be perpetuating a pattern and creating more delusion, certainly, more anger, more dislike for people close to us, which can only lead to bad things. So the heart doesn't understand yet in this situation, which can be applied to so many situations, what could actually be more beneficial or happier. And you have to train the heart in such things. So there's an underlying misunderstanding on one level that attacking back, lashing out, or even retreating in is whatever the knee-jerk reaction is that happens internally. That's the level of understanding that we're at in that moment. Not what we tell ourselves, not what we're remembering as far as what somebody else told us to do. All that stuff is, if it's good and helpful stuff, then we can work on training the mind to do some better things. But we have to understand that that's not the level that we're at in that moment. That's not our understanding in that moment. It's somebody else's understanding. If it's something we read or something we're working on. And then we're trying to make it our understanding, perhaps. Another misunderstanding in this example, which applies to most examples in life, is the mind doesn't understand yet that the optimum thing to do in such a situation to feel at ease or happy is to be mindful. In particular, to be able to see that the mind has gone off thinking, or is angry, or afraid, or annoyed, or whatever it might genuinely be in that moment. To be able to see and study for just a moment what it is that the mind has just done. Whether it has been gone off in thought, or got totally immersed in a painful emotion, or fight came up in it, attack mode came up, whatever it might be, it doesn't understand yet in that moment that the optimum thing would be to notice or to observe what has happened rather than be immersed in what has happened internally. Because, as most of you know who join my mindfulness classes and my instructor's mindfulness classes, and who've listened to my teacher, when mindfulness arises in a neutral and unbiased way, when it's just noticed what has arisen without trying to change it, fight it, or judge it, but it is just seen, then anything painful emotionally that arises completely disappears. It no longer has any more power. It doesn't have any fuel or steam to run on when it is observed in a neutral way. And it disappears immediately and is replaced for a moment by just a knower or an observing presence. And then in the next moment, because there's a lot of momentum from the past, a very long past of not being mindful, what happens next is we'll immediately go into thought again. So there'll just be a moment of reflecting or recollecting what just transpired. Got lost in a busy for 4 seconds or 20 seconds, or whatever it might be. And then there's a moment of lucidity, of recognizing what just transpired. And then the momentum brings us right back into thought. So the thought might, at that point, it could be anything. It could be something irrelevant. It could go right back in with a lot of momentum into the attack mode or judging or blaming the other person. Or it could go into thoughts about mindfulness. Oh, okay, yeah, I was totally in a busy there. Okay, so did I notice it? Am I noticing it neutrally? This kind of thing could come up too. And then at that point, we could recognize what we're caught in now, in the next few seconds or minutes or whatever it might be of mundane human life, mundane human existence. We get to see the next chunk of what just happened, what we got lost in, so to speak. So when we practice this type of mindfulness, where we don't fight against the mind, but we just come to see what has just arisen, what we were just lost in, what momentum has just transpired, then we get moments where the whole mundane existence and being caught in attacking and blaming and all the old patterns that are the not beneficial patterns for what I'm talking about, for transcending mundane existence. These patterns then lose their footing and lose steam and can start to disappear. And even more importantly, these patterns get seen as not where the happiness actually is. There's more happiness in that moment of mindfulness when it is seen. Certainly more peace might be noticed at first. You might even start to notice that it's actually a higher form of happiness. And then even a higher happiness, and remember these words happiness I'm using here is a different type of happiness than regular mundane happiness, like getting to taste something yummy or getting good news. It's a more subtle, beautiful type of happiness. Then there's this happiness of not just being able to have that sort of painful moment not there, of being busy in our thoughts and being upset, but then also the happiness of sort of being able to see this momentum moving of our thoughts and feelings, and seeing that it was just something the mind was lost in, it wasn't us. that it was sort of moving along uncontrollably by itself, that it wasn't any personal decision or personal experience at all. It felt so in the thoughts. But it's just the momentum or the movement of consciousness, a trained consciousness in particular, patterns and habits, that's just moseying along through what it thinks or what it was trained in as what is the best thing to do at this moment to try to cure pain. And it not only is happy when we step out of that, that's very happy, but it becomes even happier when we see it for what it is, just movement and flux of consciousness, not under anyone's control. That part takes more training, takes more moments of mindfulness. It takes a higher quality mind that's able to step out of being lost in the mundane existence for longer periods of time. Of course, I have mindfulness classes, and my instructors help to pass the message along of how that's accomplished. So doing these things, we start to train the mind in higher forms of happiness, and then the mind, because it becomes a new habit to grow in mindfulness, and because it starts to be seen as actually the happier thing to do, then the mind starts picking that up and wants to do it even automatically more than it wants to attack and be lost and angry and be long periods of time busy in thoughts and analysis. And so that's the happy side effect. The nice side effect is that it's happier. And then what really starts to happen, the more end goal, the long-term reasons, are starting to transcend the delusion of just being this mind in this body, that I am this mind in this body. So there are a lot of great, helpful perspectives that I can touch on one or two more. But ultimately, it's this practice of being able to see things as they actually are, like I'm describing, that helps us to see things in their right perspective. So I can help, what I'm saying now is that I can help you to have some perspectives on the world in this new year that are beneficial perspectives. But the beneficial perspectives, when I just recite them to you, are nice ways to look at things. But ultimately, they will be the way that you look at things automatically when you're more mindful and seeing things as they really are. So for example, in this example where we feel like we're being personally attacked, even in a small way sometimes, like someone says something and, was that a shot at me? In some cases very obvious. But here's an example of a perspective that we don't have immediately, that we can start to train the mind in, is that if we are being attacked by somebody verbally, that isn't an accident. That there was a whole set of causes, a whole chain of linked causes and effects that made that situation happen, that made that moment possible. In fact, all the good moments and all the bad moments. There is some sort of internal alignment with them, or cosmic alignment with them, either way, if you want to look at it as an inside thing, or the cosmic alignment inside us that made that moment possible. So yes, I'm talking about karma, but in the sense that is necessary for our development, is to be able to see that moment as not something that is completely uncalled for, because that's usually how we see it, at least immediately, without any introspection. Completely uncalled for, shouldn't happen, things should just be comfortable and happy and peaceful. Or people should just generally be nice to me and good to me. And I think that might be why we often, if we take a look, we get quite offended, and sometimes deeply offended by very small things. Even traffic, we can actually get offended by, feel like we've been personally attacked. In some cases, you might even notice things as silly as feeling offended when somebody doesn't take our fashion advice, or even somebody we don't know might be wearing something that we think is silly, and you can almost sense at times, if you're a character, just as an example, if you're a character inside, you consider yourself a good dresser or somewhat fashionable, then even somebody you don't know sitting next to you, and something that doesn't affect your life at all, there can actually be a feeling of offended by what they're wearing, or by a degree of separation, their opinions on things can be apparent by some of their appearance, like the way that they comb their hair, or wear their beard or not, or whatever it might be. And there can actually be a feeling of offended, like it goes against what I think, or my opinion, something somebody might be wearing. So we can actually just look at somebody or something and get offended. We're very much, our character for some reason feels very attacked, even with some of the smallest, most ridiculous things. If we actually have a look, we might not notice that we're offended or feel attacked as often as we are. But I assure you, if you start to become more acutely mindful of your own reactions, not what you'd like to think or prefer to think or read you should think or feel, but the actual knee-jerk thought or feeling, which sometimes you might have a mechanism that you quickly cover it up because you don't want to show yourself to yourself, or you'd like to be different than you are. But I'm talking about what actually arises the quickest, the first thing that arises, which often goes under the radar. You have to start being more attentive to internally to see and then admit to yourself as an important and again, I'll use the word vital aspect of self-development, not to cover up what's there, but to genuinely see what's there. And what I'm saying isn't for somebody else to do. It's for you to do. Whether you consider yourself already spiritual, good practitioner, or whatever. Or perhaps some of you can't, if you've been practicing for a while, for a long time, may even have trouble admitting that this information is for you. To see that first reaction and not pretend you're the second reaction that you've learned is better. But to be able to see what comes up first and know that that's where the understanding is at. And then instead of being deflated by that, to see that not as a person or as you, but as the level of understanding of that consciousness in that moment. And just to be able to be truly mindful and get this process really developing, vital step to see that, not deny what arises immediately, and be open to maybe not knowing. Maybe I don't know myself as well as I thought. So the immediate reaction is important to see. But when the perspective we're working on now is the perspective of what has just arisen in my life, this person attacking me and then feeling offended, that we sense it as something that is not right, that shouldn't happen, that we're offended by, it shouldn't be this way, etc. And if the perspective shifts instead to I'm not just a separate person, independent and isolated, and events happen to me. Seeing the world like that is seeing it incorrectly. Seeing it that way makes us, of course, have the mentality that, okay, what do I do now to make myself feel a little better? I'll have something tasty, I'll go and see a nice sight, I'll talk to a friend, I'll ignore my own feelings or distract myself and watch a TV show, play on my phone, have a drink, take a Tylenol, etc. But instead of seeing us as an isolated person in this world where things are happening to us, if we see it as all just a part of a bunch of chain of events, that we actually played an intimate role, a very intricate and intimate role in being put down or verbally attacked or somebody being angry at us, for this example.